Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. I heard my younger sister wreck my older sister's life before I reached the kitchen. I'm Lena and I'm 27, and I still hear that line. It was late, the house was quiet, and her voice cut through everything. If I had turned around right then, none of this would exist. I stopped on the last step when I heard Noah's name. He was on speaker, his voice thin and distant from the counter. Ava laughed in this forced way that made my skin crawl. I stayed hidden by the doorway, already doing the wrong thing. Just tell me straight, Ava, his words came out tired. Is Hannah with someone or not? He sounded like someone bracing for a punch he already expected. My hand rested on the wall and I swear it felt hot. She is, Ava breathed out like it hurt her to admit it. She's actually engaged already. My brain stalled on that word like it hit a wall. Engaged to who? Because it sure as hell was not Noah. For a second I honestly thought this was some twisted joke. Some stupid prank, some weird plan I had missed earlier. Then I heard the silence on his end stretch and harden. I realized nobody was joking, and something real snapped inside. Engaged, he repeated it once, very slow, no emotion at first. The way people repeat bad news just to believe it. I pressed my back to the doorframe and my heart jumped. I should have walked in, I know that now. Ava shifted, I heard a chair scrape a little across tile. She didn't know how to tell you okay. Her voice dropped low, soft, like she was comforting him. I could picture her tugging at her sleeves, sounding so sincere. She met someone more serious a while ago. Another lie rolled out smooth and steady like she had practiced. She said it felt cruel to keep leading you on. The words landed heavy, and I flinched even though they weren't mine. I remember thinking, say something, just open your mouth already. All I managed was to hold my breath so she would not hear me. If I stepped in, I would also admit I was listening. So I stayed frozen and tried to justify being a coward. Why didn't she just tell me herself? Noah sounded hoarse like he had swallowed glass. She picked a ring with him and I had no idea. The floor felt unsteady and I pressed my heel into the step. Ava let that line sit there before she answered. She didn't want to humiliate you, that's what she told me. She said you're a good guy and you'd bounce back. I bit my tongue so hard it hurt just to stay quiet. The thing is, Hannah tells me everything when it matters. If she had chosen someone else, I would have known. There was no ring, no other man, no secret timeline. I knew that and still I did nothing that night. On the phone I heard movement, like he had stood up. I was going to ask her to move in next month. He let out this short bitter laugh that did not sound like him. My throat squeezed and I felt ashamed for listening and not stopping it. Ava didn't sound surprised at all, which scared me more. You deserve someone who chooses you first, Noah. Holding on after she said yes to another guy is pointless. She was cutting the rope while acting like she was saving him. Is she happy at least? That question hit me harder than anything else he said. He was still trying to care about Hannah while he bled. I pictured Hannah upstairs, scrolling her phone, totally unaware. Ava hesitated just for a heartbeat and then pushed. She's really happy, I promise she doesn't want drama. She just wants you to move on without awkward conversations. Every word shoved him further from my sister and I watched. My fingers started to tingle, that weird panic feeling. I shifted my weight and the floor creaked under my heel. Ava paused and I stopped breathing like a kid hiding. She went back to the call and I stayed invisible anyway. Okay, Noah's voice finally cracked on that small word. Tell her she doesn't have to worry, I won't bother her. He cleared his throat like he wanted to swallow the moment. I'm glad I heard it from you and not in public. That sentence still makes me nauseous when I replay it. He actually thanked the person stabbing him in the back. I could almost see him rubbing his face, trying not to cry. I hated myself more in that second than I hated her. Anytime, Ava exhaled like she had done something noble. You know I care about you too, I just want things calm. There was a soft clatter as she moved her phone on the counter. Take care of yourself please, you deserve better than this. He hung up, there was a tiny beep, then silence. Ava stayed still for a long moment, which was not like her. I waited for guilt or panic, or some sign she regretted it. Instead she let out a slow breath that sounded almost satisfied. I stepped back one pace, then walked in like I just arrived. Hey, my voice came out thin, weaker than I hoped. She jumped a little, then grabbed her water like nothing happened. My heart was ham. Ring so loud I wondered if she heard it. Who was that? I tried to sound casual and failed. I opened a cabinet I did not need just to move. Sounded serious from the hallway, I almost didn't come in. I watched her face instead of the shelf, waiting for a crack. Wrong number, she shrugged and took a sip, eyes on the sink. She did not even blink at the lie, which scared me. Some guy asking for a different Hannah, super awkward call. She smiled, but it never reached her eyes, and I noticed. I leaned on the counter, closer than she liked when she hid things. You sure that was all? I asked, my voice calmer now. She bristled, shoulders stiff, jaw tight, and glanced toward the doorway. You always creep around listening, Lena, you need a hobby. The hit landed because she was not entirely wrong about that. I backed off one step and raised my hands like I surrendered. Relax, I was just getting water, not spying on you. I laughed once way too loud and even I heard the shake. She softened a little at my fake joke and rolled her eyes. Then stopped grilling me like mom, I seriously do not need that. She grabbed her phone and flipped it face down on the counter. That tiny move told me everything I did not want to admit. I filled a glass just to have something to hold. The tap roared for a second and gave us cover noise. I studied her profile while pretending to care about the water. This was my chance to push harder and I let it pass. Upstairs a message tone chimed, sharp and lonely through the ceiling. Hannah's bedroom door creaked a little, then closed again. I pictured her checking her phone, waiting for Noah like always. Down here his name sat in the air, only between us. You going up? Ava wiped her hands on a dish towel. She sounded bored again, almost annoyed, like the moment was over. Tell Hannah dinner's in the oven if she asks, she added. I nodded and she turned away, already moving on from the call. I walked out of the kitchen with the glass trembling. Halfway up the stairs I stopped and stared at the railing. All I had to do was turn around and drag the truth out. Instead I kept climbing while that lie echoed under every step. My bedroom door flew open before my alarm even started. Hannah marched in with her phone in her hand and wild eyes. He just laid on brunch, she blurted, breath choppy and sharp. She stared at the screen like it was lying to her. I pushed myself up on my elbows and forced my voice steady. What happened? I already knew it had to be him. She tossed the phone beside me and paced across the rug. He texted that he can't make it today and he's sorry. I picked up the phone and read the message twice. Short lines, careful wording, no usual jokes, no stupid emojis. He blamed work, said he had to catch up and regroup. Underneath all that polite phrasing, I heard last night humming. You think he's actually swamped or what? Hannah rubbed her neck. If it was real, wouldn't he have called instead of this? She tried to sound calm, but her voice wobbled on the last word. I felt my jaw clench while I pretended to think it through. He might just be wiped and avoiding a fight, I muttered. Ask if he wants to reschedule, keep it simple and chill. The advice tasted sour because I knew the real reason already. I handed the phone back before my fingers gave me away. She typed fast, thumbs moving like she could outrun the dread. Totally fine, let me know another day that works, she wrote. She hovered over send for a second, then hit it anyway. We both stared at the screen like it might react out loud. He took 15 minutes to respond, which felt like an hour. Appreciate you being cool about it, showed up on her screen. No promises right now, I've got a lot going on lately. Hannah's face dropped just a little, like someone cut a string. That's weird, right? She sat on the edge of my bed. He's never vague like that, he usually overshares everything. Her foot bounced against the frame in sharp little kicks. I swallowed the truth that wanted to claw its way out. People get weird when they're stressed, I said, eyes on the blanket. Give him some breathing room, see what he does next. It sounded reasonable enough, which made it even more gutless. She nodded slowly, like she was trying to believe me more than him. By noon she had checked her phone at least 30 times. Every buzz from any app made her flinch and reach. Most of the time it was nothing related to him at all. Each disappointment stacked on the last, building something heavy between us. In the afternoon she appeared in the doorway again, cheeks tight. I'm just going to call him, she said like it hurt to admit. If he's upset with me, I'd rather hear it than guess. I followed her to the living room because I couldn't sit still. She paced while the phone rang, pressing speaker so I could hear. One ring, then another, that ugly Rico. Our dead message. Her jaw clenched as the voicemail greeting droned in the silence. She hung up before the beep, eyes shining with controlled panic. He always answers, she whispered like she was afraid of the words. Or he texts that he can't, but he never just ignores. She sank onto the couch and hugged a pillow to her chest. I stood there useless, hands empty, knowing exactly why he hid. Maybe he's out or something, I tried, hating how weak it sounded. He'll probably call back once he's free and not half asleep. The excuse felt flimsy even in my own ears, almost insulting. Hannah nodded, but her shoulders stayed locked high near her jaw. That night I heard her bedroom floor creak again and again. Her footsteps crossed and recrossed, then silence, then more movement. Every time my phone lit up, my heart jumped in dread. Each quiet minute made what I'd heard in the kitchen feel bigger. The next morning she slid into the chair across from me. Her hair was tossed up in a rushed knot, eyes rimmed dark. I messaged him again, she said, voice low but not broken yet. He read it and didn't answer, so I guess that's my answer. She showed me the last line she had sent late at night. If I did something wrong, please just tell me straight, she wrote. Under it sat that tiny read mark with no reply at all. The emptiness there was louder than any fight they'd ever had. You didn't mess up, I said, trying to keep my gaze steady. You're not crazy for wanting clarity, that's a normal thing. I sounded like some relationship podcast I never listened to. Inside, I wanted to grab the phone and confess everything myself. She leaned back and let out a strained laugh that hurt to hear. Maybe he finally realized I'm too much, she joked without smiling. I talk too fast, I jump into things, maybe he got spooked. She pulled at a loose thread on her sleeve like she deserved this. Here's the part that still makes me feel grimy when I remember it. I almost opened my mouth and just threw Ava under the bus. I pictured the fight, the fallout, the mess at home afterward. I shut down instead, like some coward on autopilot, and looked away. The days that followed didn't blur, they stuck like glue in my head. Little scenes, short moments, all circling the same awful center. At dinner, I watched her drag food around her plate without tasting. Our parents traded glances and chalked it up to grown-up stress. Maybe she's overloaded, Mom murmured one night, stacking dishes. Everyone's tired lately, jobs and everything feel heavier after this year. Dad nodded and went right back to a news clip on his phone. I kept drying plates, teeth grinding because I knew too much. Later in the hallway, Hannah lowered her voice near my shoulder. I didn't tell them anything, she muttered, eyes on the carpet. They'd overreact or make it about them, I can't handle that. She walked away before I could answer, leaving me with my excuses. One afternoon I found her on the couch scrolling through her messages. She wasn't crying, which somehow made it worse than if she had. She just kept opening their thread, looking at the same lines again. It felt like watching someone pick at a wound just to feel something. What are you hoping to see? I asked, taking the spot beside her. Some hidden clue, some secret sign you missed the first time. She shrugged without looking away, eyes locked on the empty chat. If he just said goodbye, I could at least hate him properly. I knew exactly what he believed because I'd heard it firsthand downstairs. He thought walking away meant sparing her from an ugly triangle. He thought he was being the bigger person by disappearing like this. Hannah only saw abandonment, no context, no twisted logic, just the sting. At one point she opened their oldest messages and scrolled upward slowly. Little jokes, dumb photos, late-night lines about their future plans. Her mouth twitched a few times like she might laugh or scream. She closed the thread suddenly, as if it burned, then reopened it anyway. Do you think I rushed him? She asked me on the third night. We were both in the living room, some show playing, forgot. I talked about moving closer, maybe I made him feel trapped. She chewed the inside of her cheek so hard it almost bled. I think if he freaked out, that's on him, I answered. You shouldn't have to shrink yourself just to keep someone around. The words came out firm and almost brave, which felt ridiculous. I still wasn't brave enough to hand her the real story. She looked at me like she wanted to believe every syllable. You really think I'm not asking for too much, she pressed. I get intense, I know that, I just thought he liked it. Her eyes searched my face like I held some final verdict. You're not too much, I repeated slower so it would land. If anything, he's being too vague and weird and unfair. That part was true, even if he had helped G. Edding there. I wish truth alone could fix a mess built on lies. The fourth night she came into my room without knocking again. She held her phone like it weighed 100 pounds in her fist. Okay, she breathed, watch me do something mature for once. Her thumb hovered over the screen while her jaw clenched tight. She opened his contact, stared at it for a long beat. Then she hit the delete option and confirmed it without pausing. The name vanished from her list, and she exhaled like she'd been underwater. I watched her try to look relieved while her eyes filled anyway. There, she said, voice rough, now I can stop acting desperate. She laughed in the sharp, broken way that made my stomach twist. If he wants to reach out, he knows where I live. She handed me the phone like she needed proof she'd done it. I held the blank screen and felt the weight of what I knew. One conversation downstairs had rewritten everything in that little device. I nodded like I approved because I didn't know what else to do. Later, alone, I hated myself for letting a deleted contact be the end. A tablet buzzed on the coffee table while water ran upstairs. I glanced down, saw Ava's lock screen light up with Noah's name. My pulse jumped so fast I actually checked if I misread it. The shower kept going above us, steady like a ticking clock. Another vibration hit, and the preview popped wider for a second. Thanks again for being real about everything with her, it flashed. My hand moved before my brain caught up and grabbed the tablet. I knew I was crossing a line, and I did it anyway. The screen opened without a code, which almost made me choke. Ava had their thread pinned to the top, neat and private. Noah's newest text sat at the bottom, still blue and raw. Don't know how I'd handle this without you in my corner. My chest tightened as I read that last part again. Without you in my corner. So this wasn't a one-time favor, this was an ongoing thing. I scrolled up once, already dreading what I was about to see. A few messages earlier he had written, it still stings like hell. Trying to wrap my head around her getting engaged that fast. He added, feels like a bad joke, but I guess that's life. I felt lightheaded because this was the lie living in his phone. Ava's response sat right under it, calm and confident. I know it's brutal, but she really didn't want to hurt you. She cried, telling me she just couldn't handle a huge confrontation. My fingers dug into the side of the tablet while I read. Another text from her followed, close behind the first. She said you'd eventually thank her for not dragging things out. She cares about you, just not in the way you hoped. It was like reading a script she'd written and handed to herself. I scrolled further and hit a different tone from earlier that week. Ava had opened with, hey, you doing okay, you seemed off lately. He answered, just worried about Hannah, feels like she's drifting away. Right there was the first little hook, thrown out like concern. She replied, she's been talking to me about big changes, you know. I don't want to break girl code, but I hate watching this. That phrase sat there, pretending to be loyalty wrapped as kindness. I could almost hear her voice in those words, smooth and careful. Noah wrote back, changes like what, just work stuff or something worse. My thumb hovered above the screen, already knowing where it led. Ava answered about her future, about commitment, about what she really wants. Every sentence stepped closer to blowing his world up on purpose. The next line from her made my jaw clench hard. She mentioned someone more stable, someone who wants the same timeline. She swore me to secrecy, I shouldn't even be telling you this. That fake reluctance jumped from the screen, like she practiced every word. He responded, so I'm just a phase, that's what you're saying. She's planning an engagement behind my back and using you as cover. I could see him reading this alone somewhere, making himself small. I fought the urge to throw the tablet just to stop reading. Ava typed, I don't think you were a phase, please don't say that. You gave her a lot, she just outgrew the situation faster than you. She begged me not to make you the bad guy in this. The irony of that line hit hard because she was doing exactly that. Water still roared upstairs, but now it sounded far away to me. My own breathing got too loud in my ears, uneven and shaky. I kept scrolling even though every message felt like pushing a bruise. Part of me needed proof that she wasn't just careless, she was deliberate. Further up, I found the night of the call I overheard. He had texted a few minutes before, "Can we talk? I'm freaking out." Ava answered, "I'm here, I'll explain everything the cleanest way I can." That word, cleanest, made something ugly twist in my gut as I read. Right before the call, there was one last line from her. "I'll tell you what she told me, even if she hates me after." Suddenly the call I had heard wasn't spontaneous at all. It was the final step in a long, careful setup she built. I should have stopped right there, but I didn't. I dragged the screen lower and hit messages from after that night. Noah had written, "Part of me wants to ask her face to face. I keep thinking maybe this is all some massive misunderstanding." Ava's answer came fast, no hesitation, like she'd waited for that doubt. "Please don't put yourself through that, she'll only deny and confuse you. She hates being the villain, she'll twist things so you feel guilty. She asked me to help you move on, I'm begging you to trust me." Trust me. Those two words repeated in my head like a bad jingle. She was using my sister's name as a shield and a weapon. And he was holding on to her version like it was the only one. I saw one more line from her that made my throat go dry. "If you need to talk, you can call me anytime, day or night." A small heart sat after it, casual, like they always talked like that. My finger hovered over the screen, even more disgusted with myself now. From him, a quieter reply. "Don't want to cross any lines, you're her family. Already feels wrong venting to you about all this." At least he was aware something felt off, even while drowning in it. Ava brushed that away with a few quick sentences. "You're not crossing anything, she checked out long before you did. You're not betraying her by opening up, she forfeited that right." Her words cut off any path that might lead back to Hannah. The shower upstairs stopped, and the pipes groaned into silence. My heart slammed against my ribs as panic flooded in fast. I snapped out of the message thread and closed the tablet. For a second I just stood there, both hands shaking around it. I dropped the device back on the table with the screen down. Then I grabbed my own phone and opened the camera with clumsy fingers. One quick motion, tap, 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 screenshots of the worst lines. The sound felt loud as a gunshot, even though it was tiny. Footsteps moved across the ceiling, heading toward the hallway vent. I shoved my phone in my pocket and forced my shoulders to relax. I picked up a magazine and pretended to flip through without seeing. Inside my head I rehearsed a bored expression, just in case. Ava came down a minute later, towel twisted high on her head. "Why are you lurking down here alone?" she asked, eyebrow raised. I snorted and kept my gaze on the page in front of me, enjoying the quiet before everyone starts yelling about dinner plans. She crossed to the table and tapped the tablet with her knuckles. "You touching my stuff?" she asked lightly, but her eyes flicked sharp. I didn't blink, which took more effort than I like to admit. "Relax, I have my own junk to doom scroll, I'm good." She seemed to accept that, or at least chose not to push. She scooped up the tablet, checked it quickly, then set it aside. The lock screen flashed once, no evidence of my little invasion left. Only my camera roll upstairs knew what had really happened here. Later in my room, I opened the photos with a tight jaw. Each shot showed her sentences stacked neatly above his responses. No tone, no voice, just plain text, and somehow that made it harsher. There was no way to pretend I had misunderstood anything anymore. I zoomed in on the line about "someone more stable" and "timeline." The words looked ridiculous and cold in that small font. I remembered Hannah spiraling over imaginary flaws while this script unfolded. My head spun with everything I hadn't stopped as it grew. Here's where my brain did that ugly shuffle between defense and blame. Part of me whispered, "You didn't create this, she did." Another part kept repeating, "You watched it start and said nothing." Both sides were right, which is why it still sits heavy now. That night at dinner, I studied Ava the entire time. She passed Hannah the salad and asked, "You good, you eating enough?" Her voice sounded caring, light, like the perfect supportive sister routine. Hannah nodded, muttered something about being fine, and pushed food around again. Watching them next to each other made my stomach twist in a new way. One sister barely holding herself together, trying not to show the break. The other smiling easily, with a man's heartbreak tucked in her tablet. I knew more than both of them in that moment, and it burned. I didn't call Ava out that night, obviously you already know that. I collected my little digital pile of proof and kept my mouth shut. But something shifted while I stared at those screenshots in bed later. For the first time, I started planning what telling the truth might cost. The doorbell rang while Hannah balanced a serving dish on one hand. She rushed to answer before anyone else could reach the entryway. I heard her cheerful "He. Why you made it," snap off mid-word. By the time I stepped into the hall, the smile was gone. Noah stood there with a woman tucked close at his side. They both held a small box and matching nervous half-smiles. Hannah's fingers tightened on the dish until it tilted dangerously. For a second, I thought she might drop it straight onto the floor. "Wow," her voice came out thin like it passed through sand. "I didn't know you were coming over." She glanced past him, searching for an explanation on his face. Instead, she landed on the ring on the stranger's hand. "This is Claire." He shifted his weight and cleared his throat. "We're engaged, thought we'd stop by and say hi." Every word hit like another brick laid between him and Hannah. My stomach lurched because I already knew whose story he trusted. Mom swept in behind me, oblivious to the crack in the air. "Look at you two, surprise guests, come inside." She took the dessert box from them and backed toward the kitchen. She didn't notice Hannah's knuckles whitening around the dish she carried. Hannah finally stepped aside and motioned them through the doorway. "Congrats," she managed, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the ring. "That was fast," slipped out before she could stop herself. Her lashes fluttered once, like she'd punched herself in the mouth. "Yeah, when you know, you know." Noah tried to keep it light, gaze bouncing anywhere but her. His attention landed on me for a quick second, and he flinched. I felt every unsaid thing jammed in that one brief look. Ava appeared at the top of the stairs halfway through the chaos. She paused, took in the scene, then lifted her brows in surprise. "Noah, wow, long time." She descended slowly, hand on the rail. Her eyes lingered on Claire's ring for one beat too long. "You two know each other?" Claire asked, shifting her grip on his arm. "Family friend," Ava answered, bright, a little too smooth. She reached out and hugged him like this was some normal reunion. My nails dug into my palm because I knew her version of this history. We all drifted toward the dining room like people pushed by tide. Chairs scraped, plates clinked, conversation tried to be loud and cheerful. Everyone talked around the real thing sitting right at the table. Hannah stayed mostly silent, chewing slowly, eyes locked on her plate. At one point, Claire leaned toward her with a hopeful smile. "I've heard so much about you, I'm glad we could finally meet." Hannah's throat worked before any sound came out at all. "Yeah, I'm sure you have," she answered, voice calm and loaded. My father launched into a story about some coworker's ruined vacation. Mom cut food into small pieces like it required full concentration. They both clung to safe subjects, anything that didn't involve feelings. Noah laughed at the right moments, but his eyes kept drifting left. Left meant Ava, not Hannah. He watched Ava whenever the table noise covered it. She responded with quick little glances, then looked away fast. If you didn't know, you'd think it was nothing, just polite. Under the surface, the tension felt like static crawling over skin. Hannah brushed crumbs into a neat line on her plate. Her jaw flexed every time Noah and Claire shared some small detail. I kept waiting for her to explode or leave, but she stayed put. When dessert came out, Mom asked Noah about the proposal story. He launched into a neat little summary with carefully chosen beats. Claire chimed in with dates and small corrections, clearly excited. Hannah laughed once at something, but there was no joy in it. I couldn't sit any longer without doing something that might matter. I grabbed empty dishes and stood up a little too quickly. "Trash is overflowing in the kitchen, I'll take it outside." My voice shook on the last word, and no one called me out. Out by the side gate, the air felt colder and sharper. I tossed the bag into the bin and wiped my hands. The house noise hummed behind me, muffled through the walls. A crunch of shoes on gravel made me jolt and turn. Noah stepped around the corner, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. "Needed a second," he muttered, eyes on the ground near my feet. His face looked tired, not just from the long day kind of tired. More like he'd been holding his breath for weeks and finally exhaled. "You picked quite a moment to drop by," I said, crossing my arms. My tone came out sharper than I planned, almost accusing. He winced, then nodded once, like he agreed with the judgment. Didn't expect it to feel this weird, he answered, voice low. I studied him, every line he carried, every flicker of guilt. Why did you even come? I asked, not bothering to soften it. You could have skipped this whole circus and enjoyed your holiday. He let out a rough breath and leaned back against the fence. She told me to keep my distance, he said, staring at nothing. She made it clear she'd moved on, she chose someone else. He SW. Allowed hard before the next part. Still felt wrong to pretend she never mattered at all. She who, I knew, but I wanted him to say it. He frowned at me like I'd lost my mind. Your sister, his brow furrowed deeper. Who else do you think I mean? So you really believe she's engaged to someone? I pushed. You bought that whole story without checking with her once. My heart hammered because I was nudging the edge of the secret. His eyes narrowed slightly, confusion starting to mix with annoyance. Ava wouldn't invent that, he shot back, finally looking at me. She was honest when no one else wanted to be straight. He rubbed his thumb over his palm, restless, unsettled. She told me about the ring, about the guy, about the baby. That last word crashed into me harder than anything before. I blinked, certain I misheard. The baby, I repeated, voice slicing through the narrow space. He nodded slowly, watching my reaction like it might confirm everything. She told me Hannah was expecting, he continued, words coming faster. That she didn't want some drawn-out drama with an ex. She said Hannah asked her to break it to me gently. He gave a short laugh that sounded nothing like humor. I guess she really didn't want to give me the news herself. He lifted his hands in a small, helpless motion. When someone tells you a woman is pregnant with someone else's kid, you don't usually go banging on her door demanding clarity. My ears rang, like blood was rushing only to my head. Pregnant was new, even with everything I already knew about their messages. Ava hadn't just bent the truth, she had launched it into orbit. I gripped the edge of the bin to steady myself, knuckles going stiff. Show me, I said, the word coming out more like a command. He frowned but reached for his phone anyway, unlocking it. His fingers hesitated over the screen before opening the chat with Ava. A thread of texts appeared, the same tone I'd seen on her tablet. He scrolled until he hit a line I hadn't glimpsed before. From Ava, she found out last week, she's terrified, she panicked. Another one under it. She doesn't want you involved, she wants a quiet life with him. My head spun as I read the next part. She begged me not to let you hang on hoping she'll come back. She wants to focus on the baby and not feel guilty about you. I felt sick, like I'd swallowed something sour that wouldn't go down. So yeah, he said, watching my face. That was pretty clear to me. His voice cracked just a little, unclear, like the word hurt. Whatever we had was done the second she made that choice. I shut my eyes for a second, trying to regroup. Images collided in my mind, none of them matching his version. Hannah hunched on the couch, staring at empty notifications. Hannah deleting his contact with shaking hands, no ring, no secret family. I'm going to ask you something, I said, forcing my eyes open. And I want you to answer without thinking about who told you what. His jaw tensed, but he nodded once, shoulders still pressed to the fence. Did you ever hear that from her mouth or just through Ava? He opened his lips, closed them, then looked away. She wouldn't even pick up when I tried, he muttered. I called, texted, she never gave me a straight line to the truth. So yeah, it came from Ava, but she wouldn't lie about something like that. I snorted, and it came out harsher than I intended. You really trust her that much? I asked, eyebrows lifting. Over the woman you supposedly were ready to live with. He flinched like I'd slapped him, then pushed away from the fence. You think I haven't been replaying this for weeks, he snapped. You think I enjoy believing she chose someone else and hid everything. His voice rose, then dropped again as he caught himself. Ava was the only one who admitted anything. What was I supposed to do? The answer sat right there on my tongue. You were supposed to ask Hannah. You were supposed to demand better than whispers through a third person. I swallowed it because I wasn't actually innocent in this mess either. Instead, I took a different swing. If a story like that reached you, wouldn't you want receipts? He frowned, confusion tugging between his brows. Screenshots, proof, something besides her word, I added, leaning in. He hesitated, then opened the chat again with a flick of his thumb. There were screenshots, he said quietly, eyes dropping to the screen. She sent me part of a conversation, just a section though. I moved closer and he tilted the phone so I could see. The image showed Hannah's name at the top with a bubble under it. I can't do this forever, I need stability, I need certainty, it read. On its own, it looked bad, like she was done with something fragile. My skin crawled because I'd never seen that fragment before. Underneath, Ava had written to him, "This was about you." She said she can't keep bling on someone who isn't ready. Then she told me about the new guy and how fast things clicked. It was a master cut, pulling one line and giving it a new frame. You ever see the rest of that conversation? I asked, voice low. He shook his head, lips pressing together. That was enough, he answered, eyes still glued to the picture. Didn't really need the play-by-play once I saw that. I almost laughed and it came out sounding broken. You always needed the whole picture before, I said, staring at him. You're the guy who asks follow-up questions about movie plots. Now you're okay with half a sentence standing in for everything. He looked up sharply at that, shame flickering across his features. I was hurt, he said, shoulders sagging. Hurt people grab the first explanation that fits, even if it's ugly. He ran a hand through his hair, then dropped it, exhausted. Standing there with him, something inside me shifted from guilt to anger. Not just at him, not just at myself, but at the person scripting this. I pictured Ava inside, laughing at some joke while dessert plates passed. She held the strings while the rest of us stumbled in circles. She's not pregnant, I blurted before caution could catch up. The words hung between us, solid, impossible to take back. His head snapped up so fast I thought he'd get whiplash. What? The single word came out strangled and sharp. She is not pregnant, I repeated slower, each syllable deliberate. She also isn't engaged to anyone, not secretly, not publicly. I watched his entire face rearrange, confusion overtaking everything else. If she were, I promise you I would know. He stared at me like I'd just spoken another language. You're telling me Ava lied about all of it, he asked. His voice dropped almost to a whisper, as if someone might hear. His grip on the fence tightened until his knuckles stood out. I'm telling you something doesn't match, I answered, pulse pounding. And I have plenty of reason to doubt the version you heard. I thought of the screenshots hidden on my own phone upstairs. Felt the weight of them pressing between every word right now. He dragged his hands over his face and stepped back once. If that's true, then I walked away for nothing, he murmured. I broke my own heart because someone decided to play narrator. His eyes went glassy, not from tears but from shock. Behind us, the back door creaked open just a little. We both froze, listening, but no one stepped out yet. The party noise swelled for a moment, then dipped again. I felt the window for this conversation closing fast on us. You need to talk to her, I said, words rushed now. Not tonight, not while she's barely holding herself together inside. But you need to talk to her directly, no middleman, no extra voice. He nodded slowly, like his brain was trying to restart. And Ava, he added, the name tasting wrong in his mouth now. I need to ask her why she'd do that if she really did. His brows drew together, hurt turning into something sharper. You know, she acts like she's the only one with a conscience. The back door opened wider this time, light spilling onto the path. Ava stepped out, arms folded, scanning the yard until she spotted us. There you two are, she called, tone light like she'd found kids sneaking candy. Dinner's almost wrapped, you disappearing together looks pretty suspicious. She walked toward us, words casual, eyes far from relaxed. I saw the quick calculation there, the flicker of worry when she saw his face. Her gaze bounced between us, landing on me with a silent question. In that instant, I knew this secret wasn't staying buried much longer. What are you plotting out here? Ava's voice cut across the yard. She came toward us with her arms folded tight over her chest. Noah stiffened next to me and stepped back like he'd been caught. I felt my throat close because everything was about to snap. We're just talking, I answered, fingers still clenched around the fence. The words sounded thin even to me, like I barely believed them. Ava's gaze moved from my face to his, reading every twitch. She knew something was off, and I knew she knew. You look like someone died, she told Noah, scanning his expression. Is this about the past again, because you really don't need that? He held her stare for a long beat without saying anything. That silence said more than anything he could have explained. What exactly did you tell me again? He asked, voice rough. He took a step closer to her, hands flexing at his sides. You told me you were passing along her wishes, right? He flicked his chin toward the house where Hannah sat alone. Ava blinked once, then steadied herself, shoulders rising slightly. I already laid that out for you, she answered, tone careful. She wanted a clean break, no drama, no drawn-out goodbye. Her eyes slid toward me at the word clean, sharp and warning. She didn't want a break, I cut in before I chickened out. My chest thumped so hard it almost blurred my vision. You never heard that from her, only from you-know-who. I jerked my head toward Ava, not bothering to hide it. Ava let out a low, forced laugh that felt hollow. Are you serious right now? She asked, turning fully to me. You're going to do this out here with guests inside. Her jaw tightened but her smile stayed glued in place. Is she expecting or not? Noah asked, voice dropping cold. He wasn't looking at me anymore, only at Ava. You told me she was starting a family with another man. Each word came out slow, like he had to force them through. For a second something flashed in Ava's eyes, quick and panicked. Then she smoothed it over and shrugged one shoulder. She told me she was late and scared and leaning that direction. She changed her mind, I guess. I didn't get every update. She never mentioned that to me once, I threw back immediately. And she tells me when she runs out of coffee, so try again. My hands were shaking now, but I didn't hide them anymore. Ava looked from me to Noah like she was choosing a side. She didn't want to admit it to you, Ava snapped, patience gone. You judge her for every decision, you always have. She took a sharp breath, steadying herself, then faced Noah again. I told you what she confided because I didn't want you blindsided. You told me she had a ring, he reminded her, voice flat. You told me she picked out names with another guy. His face twisted like he heard his own words for the first time. Are you going to blame that on confusion too? Claire's voice floated from the back door, calling his name. All three of us froze for a beat, like kids caught stealing. He glanced toward the house, then back at Ava, torn. This conversation is not finished, he said, stepping away from us. He walked toward the door with his shoulders tight and uneven. Claire met him halfway, reaching for his arms, searching his face. He said something low that didn't carry, then kissed her forehead. They disappeared inside together, and the door shut like a final click. I turned back to Ava, and the polite mask finally dropped. Her eyes narrowed, mouth pressed into a hard, thin line. What did you tell him? She asked, each word slow and loaded. The wind picked up, and I realized I was actually shaking. I told him the parts that were actually true, I answered. That she isn't seeing anyone else, that there's no baby coming. That he built his decisions on half sentences and staged screenshots. My voice wobbled once, but I kept going anyway. You went through my stuff, she hissed, stepping closer to me. Who do you think you are, spying like some detective? She jabbed a finger at my chest, eyes bright and furious. You had no right to read anything between me and him. You had no right to rewrite her entire life, I fired back. I swatted her hand away, heat climbing up my neck. You used her name to get his attention, admit that much. I could feel something inside me finally snapping free. You always act above everything, Ava snarled, losing the sweetness. You sit on the sidelines and then judge the rest of us. Her voice rose, echoing against the fence and siding. You have no idea how it feels to be second to her constantly. There it was, the core, right on the surface at last. You wanted him, I said quietly, more statement than question. You saw him grieving and decided that was your window. For a moment her expression went naked and raw. I deserved a shot at someone who actually noticed me, she spit. She collects people and then forgets them when she's bored. She would have moved on anyway, she always does, you know that. Her hands trembled, not with fear but with ugly conviction. The back door opened again and our mother leaned out, frowning. Dessert's ready, what is taking so long out there, she called. She scanned our faces but chose not to ask questions. Please come in before everything gets cold, she added, then retreated. Ava dragged in a breath and straightened, mask sliding back on. This stays between us, she ordered, voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You blow this up and you'll wreck every relationship in this family. She turned and headed inside without waiting for an answer. I stayed outside for 3 long breaths, maybe 4. My hands rested on the fence, palms stinging from my grip. For once, I didn't let myself sink back into silence. I knew exactly what I was going to do next. When I went back in, the dining room felt crowded and loud. Laughter bounced around like nothing strange had happened outside. Hannah caught my eye across the table, searching my face. Whatever she saw there wiped what little calm she had left. "Come with me," she muttered, pushing her chair back abruptly. She didn't wait for an answer, just headed down the hallway. Mom started to protest, then bit it back when she saw her expression. I followed, heart pounding so hard my ears rang. We ducked into my room and closed the door behind us. She turned on me immediately, breathing fast, hands on her hips. "What's going on with him?" she demanded, eyes blazing. "You were out there a long time and he looked wrecked." I almost reached for some softer half-truth out of habit. Instead, I grabbed my phone from the dresser with clumsy fingers. "You need to see something," I said, unlocking the screen. My voice shook harder than my hands at that point. Her gaze flicked from my face to the phone and back. "You're scaring me," she whispered, shoulders tightening. If this is about him getting engaged fast, I already noticed. "It's not that," I said, and my throat closed around the words. I opened the first screenshot and handed her the phone. The one where Ava described her as choosing a safer option. The one where she painted him as temporary and disposable. Hannah read in silence, lips parting slowly as each line landed. "What is this?" she asked, barely audible, finger hovering over the screen. "Where did you get this? When did this happen?" Her eyes darted across the messages again, searching for some glitch. I could almost see the moment she recognized her own name in there. "That's from Ava's conversation with him," I answered, forcing myself steady. "I saw her messages on her tablet, then I saved proof. She told him you had a different man that you were expecting." The last part nearly stuck in my throat, but I pushed it out. Hannah snapped her head up so fast her hair whipped her cheek. "Expecting," she repeated, like the word poisoned her mouth. "She told him I was expecting," she said again, louder this time. A sharp laugh tore out of her, nothing about it amused. Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't fall yet, they hung there. She swiped to the next image, then the next, fingers shaking. Each one showed another piece, another twist added to his picture. Her jaw worked like she was grinding her teeth just to stay upright. "How long have you known this?" she asked, eyes never leaving the screen. The question hit harder than anything else she said that night. My chest tightened because this was the part I had earned. "I heard the call weeks ago," I admitted, voice small. She finally looked at me, and the hurt there almost knocked me back. "Weeks," she repeated, breath catching, eyebrows lifting in disbelief. "You watched me beg for answers while you knew this existed." Every word landed like a direct slap deserved, and I flinched. I froze, I blurted, words racing each other out of my mouth. I told myself it wasn't my business, that I'd make it worse. I kept waiting for some better moment that never showed up. I hated how weak it sounded, even though it was the truth. She stared at me for a long beat, then exhaled shakily. "I can't even decide who I'm more furious with," she said. Her hand went to the wall for balance like the room tilted. "That you didn't tell me hurts in a different way." "I know," I whispered, because there was nothing to defend. My eyes burned now, not from her anger, but from mine at myself. "I'm telling you now because she's still in there steering everything. If I keep quiet tonight, I'm part of it for real." Something shifted in her face then, some line hardening for good. She straightened, shoulders rolling back like she was gearing up. "Send these to me," she ordered, lifting the phone slightly. "Every single one, I want all of them on my screen." I tapped quickly and forwarded the images to her number. Her own phone buzzed on the nightstand, sharp and insistent. She grabbed it, checked that they arrived, then slid it into her pocket. When she looked up again, her eyes were cold and crystal clear. "Where is she?" Hannah asked, already knowing the answer. Her voice had that flat edge it gets right before she snaps. "In the dining room, probably acting like world's most loyal sister." My stomach rolled because I knew what was about to happen. She yanked the door open and strode down the hallway. I trailed after her, every step feeling like walking toward a cliff. The chatter at the table dipped as she reappeared in the doorway. Even Noah's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Ava, Hannah said, not raising her voice, which was scarier. Can you look at me for a second? Everyone fell silent at that, like some unseen switch flipped. Ava turned slowly, smile already forming out of habit. What's up? She asked, trying to keep it light. The corners of her mouth twitched when she saw Hannah's face. Hannah pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over the screen. In a minute you'll tell me if this rings any bells. She tapped once and held the display out across the table. The first screenshot glowed between them, text unmistakable. Ava's gaze dropped, scanned the words, then jerked back up. Color drained from her cheeks and her hand twitched toward the device. Don't grab it, Hannah warned, pulling it just out of reach. Just answer one thing, did you send these to him? Her voice stayed calm, steady, which somehow cut deeper. The rest of us sat frozen, barely breathing. I was trying to soften the blow, Ava blurted too quickly. I didn't think he'd show it to anyone, it was private. She looked around like someone might jump in and rescue her. No one moved, not even my parents, not even me. You invented a pregnancy, Hannah continued, still frighteningly even. You told him I was building a whole future with some mystery guy. You watched me fall apart and never corrected a single detail. Her hand shook now, but her stare never broke. Mom finally pushed her chair back, eyes wide. There has to be some misunderstanding, she began, voice trembling. This sounds like gossip that got out of hand, nothing more. Hannah laughed once, harsh and humorless, cutting that off. Misunderstanding is forgetting someone's birthday, she shot back. Misunderstanding is mixing up a time or a place. This is creative writing about my life, delivered to my ex. She swung her gaze back to Ava, all focus on her again. Ava's eyes filled, but she held onto her stubbornness like armor. You were planning to move on, she accused, pointing a finger. You talked about wanting someone reliable, you said that to me. I just told him what you made obvious every time you vented. Show me the message where I said I was pregnant, Hannah replied. Show me the part where I mentioned a ring or another man. She slammed her hand down on the table, dishes rattling. Go ahead, pull it up, I'll wait right here. Ava's gaze darted to Noah, who watched with his jaw locked. His fiancée sat rigid, clutching her napkin like a lifeline. Under the table his leg bounced, nostrils flaring with every breath. He looked at Ava the way someone stares at a stranger. You twisted one line, Hannah continued, voice climbing now. You ripped it out of context and gave it your own ending. You turned me into a villain so you could swoop in as savior. The room felt packed with the weight of every word. I cared about both of you, Ava insisted, lip quivering. I was stuck in the middle, trying to keep anyone from shattering. I thought if he believed you were happy, he'd let go faster. Her justification landed heavy and hollow in the center of the table. You weren't stuck in the middle, I cut in, unable to stay quiet. You climbed right into the center and grabbed the microphone. My palms pressed into the back of a chair hard enough to ache. You used her pain as your opening, stop pretending otherwise. Mom looked from one of us to the other, lost. Please, we are family, we can fix this later, she pleaded. Can we finish tonight without tearing each other to pieces? The desperation in her voice just made the whole thing feel worse. Later is how we got here, Hannah replied, eyes never softening. Later is what she counted on every time she opened her mouth. She turned to our parents with a tight, almost broken smile. I'm not staying in a house where my reality gets rewritten this easily. She walked out of the room and disappeared down the hallway. I heard her closet doors slide, drawers slam, her suitcase buckle. No one moved yet, like we were all holding our breath. Then my father stood and followed her, mumbling something about overreacting. You're blowing this out of proportion, he called after her. We don't toss people away over one mistake, we talk it out. His voice chased her toward the front of the house. She answered with the sound of zippers and footsteps instead of words. I left the table and passed Ava without looking at her. In the bedroom, Hannah was stuffing clothes into a bag fast. Her hands were steady now, movements sharp and decisive. She didn't even glance up when I stepped into the doorway. I'm going with you, I said, heart pounding like a drum. She paused for half a second, then kept packing. You don't have to pick a side tonight, she murmured. I already know where you stood when you stayed quiet. I'm trying to fix that, I answered, fighting the urge to flinch. I can't undo what I didn't say earlier, but I can move now. I grabbed another bag and started tossing her things into it. For once, I wasn't just standing there watching the damage spread. She finally looked at me, eyes red but razor sharp. "You're sure?" she asked, voice softer than before. "If you leave with me, things are going to change forever." I nodded, throat tight, already aware they had changed hours ago. We carried the bags down the hall together, step by step. Our parents stood by the entryway, faces pale, mouths half open. Mom reached for Hannah's arm, pleading for one more conversation. Hannah stepped back, clutching the handle of her suitcase like a shield. "I love you," she told them, voice steady, eyes shining. "But I can't stay where lies outrank my own words." She glanced toward Ava, who hovered behind them, tear-stained and shaking. "I'm done being the character in stories I never told." "You're tearing everything apart," Ava choked out, shoulders shaking. "If you walk out, there's no taking this back later." She looked at me then, betrayal burning in her expression. "You too, you're really choosing this over your own sister." "You made that choice for us," I answered, fingers tightening on my bag. "You picked your version of events and never gave us a vote." My voice shook once, but I didn't pull it back. "Now we're just acting on what you already started." We opened the door and stepped outside into the cooler air. The noise inside shrank to a muddled blur behind us. I heard someone call my name, maybe Mom, maybe Ava, I'm not sure. Hannah kept walking down the path without looking back once. In the driveway she stopped and finally let out a long breath. "I'll figure out where I'm staying," she muttered, rubbing her forehead. "I just know it won't be there for a while." She glanced at me with something between gratitude and exhaustion. Now it's months later, and the holiday pictures from that night are gone. Hannah speaks to our parents only when she absolutely has to. She hasn't spoken a single word to Ava since that dinner. I text Ava on and off, but there's a wall I can't pretend away. She still insists I betrayed her trust by exposing that thread. I still think she detonated something sacred with a few calculated texts. We circle that argument every time until one of us stops replying. Neither of us really wins, and Hannah pays the highest price. So here I am, typing all this out for strangers who weren't there. Trying to step outside my own bias even while I defend myself. Part of me feels like I finally did the right thing in the end. Another part keeps asking if I waited too long to count as decent. You weren't at that table, you didn't hear any of it live. You're not tied to us by blood or old guilt or habit. So I'm handing you the messy version and asking straight. Did I actually protect my sister, or did I just show up late and burn the rest?